Well, welcome to another Friday night. We are looking at what does it mean to heal from complex PTSD? What's involved in this healing process? And we've been using the metaphor of taking a journey to give an overall picture of what this healing journey is all about. And what I want to do today is do a change of the metaphor from walking on this journey to driving a car on this journey. And I want to give very practical stuff for you all around the necessity in today's cars of having a dashboard. So as cars have developed, what we have realized are really two things. First is that often the most important parts of the car and making the car run aren't visible to the driver. They're either under the hood, they're hidden behind panels. Secondly, cars have very complicated systems that the average person doesn't understand, doesn't know how they work. They just trust that they work. And then on top of that, as cars have become more complicated, as we've evolved with understanding technology and science, we've created more sophisticated cars which have more sophisticated systems. And the more sophisticated systems we have, the more cars are capable of doing, but the more things can go wrong. And so what manufacturers of cars have had to do is develop systems to monitor the systems to keep track of whether the key systems of the car are working okay. And then what they have done is they have to design ways of letting the driver know what is happening within those systems. So they have gauges. They have lights that light up if something is not right. They can even have alarms that go off. All of this is on your dashboard. All of this is designed to make you aware if something is not right, to make you aware of how things are going in all of the different systems within the car. And so taking that analogy, what I want to do is present that you need in recovery to develop a dashboard on what is going on inside of you. So inside of you are many systems: emotional systems, spiritual systems, physical systems, intellectual systems, bodily systems, nervous systems, all of that. We need to develop a dashboard that has systems that monitor all those systems and reports to us what is going on and if something isn't working properly. So the first thing we need are gauges. Gauges that monitor the different tanks that are part of our system. And I want to give you 12 tanks. And what I want you to think about in practical terms is part of recovery is understanding that when these tanks are full, I am in a good place. I have a contentment, I feel energy, I feel whole, I feel good overall. But when those tanks are on empty or close to empty, then I'm in trouble. I don't feel motivated. I don't feel connected. I don't feel energy. I am in a negative headspace. I can be depressed. So I need to develop a way of figuring out what different tanks I have in my life and a gauge that tells me if they're full, empty, or somewhere in between. So let me just give you an example. We have what I would call a physical gas tank. And so it's probably the easiest to understand. When my physical gas tank is full of fuel, I feel energetic. I can tackle a lot of stuff. I can work hard. But when my physical gas tank is near empty, I am tired. I am exhausted. I don't feel like doing anything. I want to sleep so that I can fill my gas tank back up again. So I understand the symptoms that my gas tank is getting near empty, and I understand what needs to be done to fill it back up again. Okay, so we have a physical gas tank that has physical gas that gives us energy. We also have an emotional gas tank. So what happens when my emotional gas tank is full? I feel able to deal with life. I feel in a good headspace. I feel motivated. I am patient. I am tolerant. What happens when my emotional gas tank is getting near empty and being depleted? I don't have resources to handle problems. I just feel frustrated, irritable, down. I don't want to face issues. I want to avoid issues. So I need to be able to detect when my emotional gas gauge is getting near empty, but then I need to know how to fill my emotional gas tank back up. What kind of self-care helps me fill up that gas tank? Other gas tanks that we have come out of our basic needs. So we have built into us a need to be accepted. So when we're accepted totally, and it's communicated to us, our gas tank, our acceptance gas tank is full. And when we feel totally accepted, we feel relaxed, we feel safe, we feel loved, we feel positive. But when our acceptance gas tank, the needle is going towards empty, we feel lonely, we feel shame, we feel down on ourselves. We have lots of negative emotions that come part of that. So I need to become aware of my acceptance gas tank. Then another one is feeling valued. So when I feel valued, that gas tank is full. Again, I'm in a positive place. I feel motivated to contribute. I feel I have something to offer. When it is near empty, I just want to go hide and isolate. I feel shame. So I need to be aware of where my value, true value gas tank is at as far as empty or full, and what is important in my life in order to keep it near full. Then I have a motivation gas tank. So if it's near full, I am motivated. If it's near empty, I am not motivated. I procrastinate. I avoid. And then I have a gas tank based on connection and intimacy, healthy intimacy. So if I feel connected to people, or I am connected to people, that is full. I'm connected to myself. I'm connected to my higher power. Then what happens is, again, it's positive. I feel motivated. I feel energetic. I feel in a good place. But if I'm not connected, if that's near empty, I haven't been connecting with myself, with others, or my higher power, then I go to a negative headspace, not to a good emotional place. So my connection gas tank is critical. Then my spiritual gas tank. And that one is tricky for many to begin to understand and learn what to look for in themselves as indicators of whether their spiritual gas tank is full or empty, what that looks like, how to replenish that. We also have a fun tank. And so if our life is just constant hard work, serious, problem solving, frustration, difficulty, and we never get any fun, our fun tank gets to empty. And we just feel lack of motivation. We feel down. But if our fun tank is full, then we feel in a good place. So we have the need for fun. We have a fun tank. We also have a purpose tank. And if we're feeling a sense of purpose, that is at the full mark, then we are wanting to be involved. We feel motivated. We feel good about things. If we are feeling without purpose, that's on empty. That has a very negative effect on us. We also have a beauty tank. We need beauty as part of our lives. If that is full, we're positive. If that is negative, is empty, we're negative. And then we have a creativity tank. And when that's full, we're in a better headspace. When it's empty, we're in not so good headspace. So it's very important as you develop in self-awareness to become aware of the different tanks that make up you. And know how to fill those tanks. Know how to detect when those tanks aren't full, and what to look for as indicators that those tanks aren't full, and what you need to do to fill them back up. That's going to take you time. You have to be patient. That's an ongoing process, but those are gauges that I would encourage you to have on your dashboard. Things that you check regularly in your life. Then we also have pressure gauges. And so there's certain systems in our car that if the pressure gets too great, something's going to explode. Something's going to blow up. It's dangerous. And so those gauges always have different numbers, but then they have a red zone. And when you get to the red zone, you're in trouble. There's something wrong, something needs to change. So we have temperature gauges, oil pressure gauges. So gauges that measure pressure. How does that translate into our dashboard and our pressure gauges? I want to give you 17 pressure gauges that you need on your dashboard, things that you keep track of. So the first one is your anger. When your anger starts to get to the red zone, so that could be frustration, irritability, that is not good. You are in a danger place. If you don't make an adjustment, something bad is going to happen. Then you have a stress gauge. And when the stress of your life starts to get into the red zone, you are in danger. You are in trouble. You also have an anxiety pressure gauge. And when you're getting into the red zone so that you're worrying constantly, you are in trouble. You have a depression pressure gauge. And when depression gets into the red zone, you're in trouble. You have guilt gauge, a pressure gauge. And when guilt builds and gets to a red zone, you're in trouble. You have a shame gauge. And as shame can grow and get more intense, you can be in trouble. Also keep track of your loneliness, because when loneliness gets into the red, you're in trouble. Keep track of your boredom. When boredom gets to the red, you're in trouble. Keep track of your discontent, your restlessness, your antsiness, because when they get to a certain point, you're in trouble. Then keep track of your important relationships. And what you're keeping track of, the pressure points, is tension that you feel in your relationships, frustration with each other, unresolved conflict, the amount of satisfaction you have in that relationship. Keep gauges that keep track of that. And then keep one on parenting. So parenting can create a lot of stress, a lot of pressure. So keep track of frustrations versus contentment and satisfaction as a parent. And then have one about your job. The frustrations of your job versus the satisfaction. And when the frustrations outweigh the satisfaction, you can be in a dangerous place. Then have a gauge that keeps track of your libido, your sex drive. Because when that gets to a certain pressure point, you can be in trouble. Have a gauge that keeps track of your hopelessness. Because if your hopelessness grows and gets to a certain point, you can be in big trouble. Have one that also monitors the amount of grief that you're dealing with. And then I would suggest have one that monitors how you're doing with your finances, paying your bills, saving, managing your finances, all of that. That can create pressure inside of you. And then keep a gauge that monitors your list of things to do, the daily responsibilities, the weekly responsibilities. Because if that list is getting bigger and there's fewer things being checked off, pressure is building. And that can cause you to have problems. So what are indicators that you're getting towards the red on the pressure gauge? Number one indicator would be irritability. You just get more irritated, or you're just irritated all the time. Secondly, you start having trouble sleeping. That's a good indicator pressure is in the red zone. With that is a busy brain. You just think and obsessively. You're a hamster on a wheel. It just spins and spins. And then you start to have avoidance behaviors. So you start to go more towards just mindless distractions or procrastinating. Or another one is you find it more difficult to be present when you're with somebody because your mind is wandering. You're wishing you weren't there. You wish you were somewhere else. So all of those are indicators that the needle is getting into the red. So those are important things to understand and know about yourself and to monitor and be aware of on a regular basis. There's a third gauge, and we call it a tachometer. And that measures the revolutions per minute of your engine. And it's a very important thing to be aware of how quickly your engine is spinning as you go along, because again, if you push it too high, your engine could blow up. So a tachometer is something we need about our internal engine. That is what I call the sympathetic nervous system. It is the part of our autonomic nervous system that gives us energy. The parasympathetic is the relaxation, rest, rejuvenation part of that system. And so they are designed to operate in balance. Our sympathetic gives us energy for output, for productivity, for survival. Our parasympathetic, rest, relaxation, rejuvenation. They need to be in balance. But what happens in complex trauma is the sympathetic nervous system is operating all the time because you're constantly on guard. You're constantly in danger. The parasympathetic doesn't get a chance to do its part to help you be balanced and to rest. And so a lot of people just burn out. The problem is when people come into recovery, having a sympathetic nervous system that was working all the time as a child has become their normal. And so what they do when they get up in the morning is they rev up their engine as high as they can get it, so their tachometer is at 8,000 RPMs, and they just go at that all day. They go on adrenaline, on anger, whatever they can get to get them to give maximum energy, and they go all day till they drop in bed at night. And sometimes even then they have trouble slowing down their RPM. So what becomes important in recovery is becoming aware of your tachometer, of your sympathetic nervous system, so that you are aware if it's working too much, if you're revved up constantly, that you never relax. And so become aware of when your sympathetic system is going right from the morning right till you go to bed. That's probably not good. That's going to cause problems. But be aware of that. Begin to go, okay, what can I do to slow down my RPMs during the day? or at the end of the day so that I can truly relax and begin to rest and rejuvenate. Because if I don't learn to measure my sympathetic nervous system, my RPMs, and I ignore that system and I just go back to what feels normal with it running all the time, I will burn out again. I will be in trouble. I will soon be operating on empty or my engine's going to blow up. So you need to develop a tachometer of your sympathetic nervous system. Now the next one I find quite interesting. Most new cars today have a little symbol that's called a lane departure warning. So along the side of your car are little cameras. And if you're drifting outside of your lane into the other lane, it will buzz, it will flash, it will make a noise to get your attention that you're drifting outside of your lane. I find that fascinating for people from complex trauma, because what I find is for many people from complex trauma, they have trouble staying in their own lane. They find it very easy to drift outside of their lane, and it always leads to an accident. It leads to trouble. So some of the things that are drifting outside of our lane, not staying in our own lane, are as soon as we start to try to control somebody else in their lane. That is drifting outside of our lane, and that usually is not healthy, and it usually leads to chaos, drama, trouble. Another one is getting dragged into other people's drama. Instead of just ignoring it, letting them deal with their own stuff, we don't stay in our own lane. We get drawn into other people's drama. Another problem is, so if you look at your own lane as, this is my healthy life. And so there's lines on both sides of our lane. Those are our boundaries, our internal boundaries that we set for ourselves, or our external boundaries about involvement with others. So when it comes to our lane, we might say, I need to go to bed at a certain time, get up at a certain time, have a certain routine every day, eat a certain way, exercise a certain way, do certain spiritual activities. That's going to be my lane. What can happen is we drift out of that by not sticking to our boundaries, by getting into old behaviors. And that is drifting out of our lane, which is a very dangerous thing to do. Another part of those lines on our lane are they are defining healthy as far as morals, love. So within the lane is, I will do loving actions, I will be respectful, I will be kind, I will be responsible, I will be honest. What can happen when we drift outside of our lane is we do unhealthy things. You disrespected me, so I will disrespect you. I will step outside of my lane just for a minute to get you back. So we need to become aware of when we're drifting outside of our lane. And for those of you who are addicts, part of why that's important is when we start drifting outside of our lane, if we're not careful, it can take us to a relapse. That's how serious this whole thing is. Then there's another thing on the dashboard in newer cars, and it's basically a traction indicator. So if you're slipping or your wheels are spinning on ice, then it lights up to say you don't have traction. You're on a slippery place. And I think we need that as well in our recovery. We need something on our dashboard that lets us know when we're in a slippery place. Because what happens when we're in slippery places is we're much more vulnerable to an accident. We're much more vulnerable because we have less control. So what are some of the slippery places that we need to be aware of, that we need our dashboard to light up? For some people, it's being with their family, at a family gathering, because they don't support you in your recovery. And so they may engage in behaviors that are very triggering for you, that are very tempting for you. It's a slippery place for you. Or it could be hanging around old friends. That can be a slippery place. Or it could be going to certain places. So some people, they could go to a casino and they could just go and have some fun, keep their spending under control. But for others, that's a slippery place. That could take them into very dangerous places. The same is true with sporting events. Others can go and just enjoy it. For others, that's dangerous. They go, they want to bet. They want to get wrapped up in the drinking that's happening there. All of those things could be slippery places. So you need to be aware of those type of slippery places. Another one is if you get in a new romantic relationship, because that all of a sudden you are wanting to please that person, and it's easy to forget about your recovery. It's easy to forget about yourself. It's easy to move boundaries. That can be a very slippery place for some people. And then for others, if you're in a relationship with somebody and they relapse to drugs, that could be a very slippery thing for you if you continue in a relationship with that person. It could drag you down. That's a slippery place. For some, being all alone for too long becomes a very slippery place. For others, going through big changes in their life becomes a very slippery place. So, we all will have slippery places. We need on our dashboard things that will let us know when we are going into slippery places. And you need to figure out what would be an alert to you that would indicate you're in a slippery place. Now the next one is the door ajar symbol that lights up on your dash when you haven't fully closed the door. I wish we all could have one of those on our dashboard. And what I mean by that is this. A lot of times in recovery, we need to slam close the door on old parts of our life, on relationships, on old behaviors. But what happens for some people in recovery? They go, yeah, I shouldn't still hang around that friend, but I'm going to leave the door ajar. I shouldn't still do that behavior, but I'm just going to leave the door ajar. And what that means is I'm just going to still let myself think about it a little bit. I'm still going to leave room in my brain for it. I may not go there physically, but I'm leaving some room in my brain. That is such a dangerous thing. So, a couple areas where we tend to leave the door ajar. And we need a way of indicating to ourselves that that door is ajar when it should be closed. So the first would be when we've been hurt. Many of us want to resolve the hurt internally, but we leave the door ajar by not forgiving. We have a resentment, and that lets stuff continue to be thought about in my brain. We can continue to brew on the hurt, and that can put us in a bad place. It's not hurting the other person, it's only hurting us when we leave that door ajar. Another area is a fear that we don't deal with. Something that we just worry about, and we just keep obsessing on it, thinking on it. We don't deal with it and shut the door to that. Or another way to say that, our limbic brain is going with fear, but we don't give full control to the cortex brain that says, limbic brain, I'm not going to listen to you. Limbic brain, you're not going to run this person's life. I am by making good choices. By you, limbic brain, wanting to run this life, you want to make choices that are going to be bad. And so by shutting the door, I'm shutting it on my limbic brain and saying to my cortex, you have 100% control. And then another one is a temptation. Something that we kind of like once in a while because it gives instant gratification. Though we know it gives bad consequences long term, we don't totally shut the door on it, because once in a while we just like to play with it in our mind and think, oh, wouldn't it be great just to do that and just have some instant gratification. We don't shut the door totally, and the problem with that, every time we feed it, it grows in power. And pretty soon we can't say no to it anymore, and we end up actually acting out, and it leads to some very bad consequences. And so be aware of the areas of your life where you want to keep the door ajar. And think about that. Think about the long-term consequences, not just about the instant gratification. And listen to that light when it shines on your dashboard, and close that door. Then there's the one symbol that nobody likes to see: service engine soon. Something is seriously wrong. Some significant system is not working. And if we don't do something quickly, we are in danger of a total breakdown. And what that then means is we must seek professional help right away. We are in a crisis. And getting this fixed could cost us some money. So what are indicators that the service engine soon light is on? Number one could be you are just totally exhausted. And even though you're exhausted, you don't sleep well. That is service engine soon light. Or you feel physical pain starting to return. That's a service engine soon light. Or you're finding yourself dissociating regularly, often without even realizing it. Service engine soon light. Or you feel like a robot. You just go through the motions and you are devoid of emotions. Motion without emotions. The robot. Or you're just constantly avoiding everything. Those are service engine soon lights. If you don't act quickly, you are in big trouble. Now let me just switch out of the car metaphor for a minute and use the balance scales. Because what you're doing in recovery is learning balance. Complex trauma, everything is out of balance. Healthy living, you find a balance. And so you need to learn to see things in your life as two parts that need to be in balance, and look to see if they're out of balance. So you will have work versus rest. Very important to have those in balance. Secondly, connected with that, the output of energy in service, in helping, in work, versus the input of rejuvenating energy. Then, relationships. There's going to be conflict, but I need to enjoy the relationship too. And if the relationship is nothing but conflict, another problem, and so it's always working at problems and never enjoying, that's going to take its toll. So be aware of that. Then, when you work and interact with people, there are some people that just drain you of energy. They have so many needs. You need people also then that pour into your life, that give, that energize you so that you're in balance. If you just have people that are full of need and take from you, and you don't have energizing people who give to you, you're going to burn out. And then we need environments to live where there's a balance between criticism, healthy criticism, and encouragement. And if we're just getting criticism, and not encouragement, it's going to put us in a bad place. Now let me just give you some different car owners. So there's the first car owner, and they regularly service their car. They take it in the spring, in the fall, in the winter, and they get the oil changed regularly. They're checking the tire pressures, all of those things. They are keeping up on their car, making sure everything's working well. Then there's the type of owner that only takes their car to the mechanic if one of the lights on the dashboard comes to light. And then they take it to the mechanic. The third type is they see the light on the dashboard, they get angry, ignore the light, and they don't take it to the mechanic until the car breaks down. And that is a very common type of person, sadly, when it comes to complex trauma. They ignore the lights, they get mad at the lights, they don't pay attention to the lights, and they don't get help until it breaks down. So what does healthy recovery mean? Develop a dashboard for your life. Take what I've been talking about and figure out how to make sense of it in your life. But then take time every day to read your dashboard, to read the different gauges, to see the pressure gauges, to see if any lights are on. Take time every day. Sometimes in the morning and at night might be a good thing for you to do. And third, if there's a light on, figure out what to do to fix the situation. Figure out what's wrong, what needs to be done. But then fourth, be an ongoing maintenance person. Every day be taking care of yourself. Healthy self-care, meeting your physical needs, emotional needs, spiritual needs, intellectual needs, relational needs. Figure out a routine that enables you to do daily maintenance on you, on your car. That is so important. So I hope this has been practical help for you, and it'll just help you on your journey. Okay, that's the end of part one. Going to take a short break, and I'll be back for part two, which is the Christian part. If you're not interested in that, that's not a problem. We don't mind at all. You're free to go. We'll see you next week. For everybody else, I'll be back in just a minute. Well, welcome back. We've been going through the life of Abraham and his journey. And what we saw last week is that the writer of the account of Abraham spends most of his time focusing on the problems that Abraham encountered. And so today we come to a problem, but what we're going to find is it leads to a deeper problem that at first wasn't obvious. So Abraham has just returned from Egypt, and because of the events there, Pharaoh sent him back with extra flocks, extra money, extra servants. And so what the problem becomes back in this land of Canaan is that Lot, his nephew, also has flocks that he's developing. Abraham has flocks that are growing, but they have limited pasture land. And so all of a sudden, the shepherds that take care of Lot's flock, the shepherds that take care of Abraham's flocks, they're arguing. They're fighting over who's going to get pasture land for their flocks today. And so it is causing a lot of tension, a lot of problems. And so Abraham knows, okay, this has to be dealt with. So what is the solution? So Abraham goes, okay, we have to find another pasture land and then split up. So Abraham says to Lot, let's not have any quarreling between you and me, or between your herders and mine, for we are close relatives. Is not the whole land before you? Let's part company. If you go to the left, I'll go to the right. If you go to the right, I'll go to the left. And that all sounds fantastic. But that solution to the lack of land, pasture land problem, now exposes a deeper problem, which is Lot. So here's what happens. Lot looked around and saw that the whole plain of Jordan was well watered, like the garden of the Lord, like the garden of Eden, like the land of Egypt. So Lot chose for himself the plain of Jordan and set out toward the east. Now the key thing there is that the plain of Jordan is well watered, but nothing else is. So Lot basically says, I don't care about my uncle, even though he's older than me, even though he's got more flocks than me. All I care about is me. I want the best. I don't care if Abraham suffers. I want the best land, the best pasture land. So we see in Lot this very selfish man, this very greedy man who doesn't care about the needs of others, who doesn't respect those in his life who have bent over backwards to help him. This is a man who's a narcissist. This is a man who's got different values and priorities than Abraham. He's not a man about loving people. He's a man about selfishness. And what I want you to see from that is we're going to run into people in recovery who are like Lot. And we're going to have to make a decision about what to do with them. And I think what we find with Abraham is he realized that this has been a pattern in Lot. This is a deep-set character flaw. So Abraham basically has two options, and it's kind of the same two options that we have in recovery when we come across people in our life who are like Lot, who are operating out of a narcissist place of selfishness. They're operating out of different values, different priorities than us. And we're finding ourselves walking beside them in a relationship with them. So the first option for Abraham was he could just bend over backwards to accommodate Lot, to give Lot whatever Lot wanted, to try to keep Lot happy, to let Lot basically run the show, to avoid conflict. But what he realized was that wouldn't work, because Lot still would not be happy. Lot would still want more. He could stand on his head to try to make this a happy relationship, but he would be the only person trying to make this a happy relationship. Lot would still be all about Lot. And so it would not work. And because of that, it would negatively affect everybody else in Abraham's life. They would see that Lot was being put ahead of their needs. They would see that Lot's selfishness was causing everybody else to suffer, and Abraham was not doing anything about it. He was just giving in to Lot, and they would begin to resent Abraham. They would begin to lose respect for Abraham. The ripple effect by of Abraham letting Lot have whatever Lot wanted would cause untold damage in the family. So there's a second option that Abraham has. He can identify that Lot is kind of like a cancer. Lot, there's no pleasing. Lot, there's no resolving in a healthy way. So instead of arguing with Lot about the land stuff, and instead of trying to get Lot to see that there's other people with needs, he knows that none of that's going to work. so he just cuts Lot loose. See you later. You're gone. And Lot is out of his life. In other words, Abraham set a boundary. He said, it is time to stop allowing this man to cause damage in the family, to cause problems. It is time to cut the tie with this person and send them on their way so that the rest of the family can stay healthy. Do you realize how hard that would have been for Abraham? Lot was like a son to him. He had invested so much in Lot. He had spent years taking care of Lot. He loved Lot. And to cut him out was so hard. And that's important to understand, because setting boundaries sometimes are being set with people we love dearly, but are people who aren't healthy. And they're doing damage to everybody else. So they're hard to set. They tear our heart out. But I think Abraham also realized, if I set this boundary, I could cause conflict. Lot could be angry at me. Lot could do a lot of damage trying to turn other people against me, trying to get other people to go on his side. This could create a bit of a war. So boundaries are often not just neat and tidy things that are accepted by everybody. They often create opposition and conflict. And this could result in Lot turning totally against Abraham, hating him from then on, developing a resentment with no possibility of resolving that relationship. This was not an easy option. But Abraham realized it was the only option. But let me make some observations. Do you realize that out of both of those options, neither one was any good? If he let Lot continue to do whatever Lot wanted, it was going to hurt a whole bunch of people. If he cut Lot loose, it was going to cause a lot of pain. Sometimes in recovery, when we're dealing with people, both of the options we have, none of them are good. None of them we're excited about. But that leads to the second thing, is if we don't make a decision, we're actually making a decision. If Abraham said, well, I'll just wait a little while longer, and maybe Lot is going to change. Well, he made a decision by not making a decision. And that not making the decision was keeping things as they were, and that was going to be doing ongoing damage. And so sometimes we have to understand that, yes, sometimes we need time to think through stuff carefully. Sometimes we need to give a little bit of time to make sure that we need to set this boundary. But once it becomes obvious, once the evidence is in, we need to make a decision. To not make a decision is to allow destructive forces to continue. And so part of recovery is setting boundaries with people like Lot. Boundaries that are hard to set. Boundaries that are going to hurt. But they often are so necessary if we're going to protect ourselves. I hope that just helps you as you're going about your journey. Let's pray. Father, it's painful to look at this story, but we realize that it's a story that most of us find ourselves in at some point, and often many times in our lives. And it's a story that calls for hard decisions, decisions that we don't like to make, decisions that affect people in negative ways. But I just pray for those who are wrestling with a similar decision in their life right now, that you would just use this story to encourage them and give them courage. Amen. Well, that's the end of a Friday night. Thank you again for being part of this evening with